pleasure to be joining you on this edition of the India Development Debate. I'm Supriya Shrinate, and really we're putting the focus to where it ideally should and always belong. Yes, this is International Women's Day, and we wish each one of you magical women out there who put the awesome outputs forward a very, very happy Women's Day. This is not just one day or a month that belongs to us. This is our century, and our time has really come. Balance for Better is this year's International Women's Day theme. And it's only fair that we talk about women, we talk about issues that hold them back. We talk about issues that will ensure more women at work, ensure their greater participation, and ensure that women don't opt out. And that should never be an option for a woman because she can't cope up. How will that be possible, and what is it that countries like India still need to do? We've got a stellar panel of women right here with me, and I couldn't have asked for a better panel. I couldn't have asked for a more diversified panel. They are achievers of their own right. They have shattered glass ceilings, and joining us right here is Ms. Arundhati Bhattacharya, the first female to lead India's largest lender, the State Bank of India. I've also got Ms. Vinita Bali, Pharmacy of Britannia, and of course Shobna Kamineni also joins us. Thank you very, very much of Apollo Hospitals. Thank you very much, all of you, for being with us. And Ms. Bhattacharya, if I may start with you, and in many ways, like I said, all three of you have broken and shattered glass ceilings. You've negated the stereotypes. I think it's only fair that I talk about the first question, that gender movement and gender empowerment finally seems to have picked up steam in India. This is no longer lip sympathy. Companies, for obvious reasons, are talking about gender diversification and all of that. Do you think there's been a sea change in the Indian society? Have we seen that change emanate in workplaces? Are we more sensitive to gender diversity and gender empowerment today than we were 5 years back? Ms. Bhattacharya?
Yes, regarding gender empowerment and gender diversity, I won't say that there is a sea change, but what I do see is a gradual change, but a change for the better. So if you consider the time when I joined and consider the time when I retired, if you take a period of say 40 years, then there is a sea change. But if you take a period of 5 years, I would say then the change is more gradual, but it is a change for the better. That much at least I can definitely conclude.
No, fair point indeed, and I think every small step towards change for the better should matter on this. I'm so glad at least it's no longer lip sympathy like it once used to be. But Vinita Bali, there have been schemes like Beti Bachao, maternity benefits that have strengthened and broadened. You know, there is a huge provision to work from home for many, many sectors, on-site daycare services in every establishment. But what still is it that corporate India needs to do? Our female workforce participation is still dismally low. What is it that corporate India still needs to do to ensure that happens? Vinita Bali.
I would agree with what Arundhati just said, and that is that, there is a pace of change. We're certainly talking a lot more than we did earlier, but, talk alone is not going to solve the issue. Every corporate, and I've been in the corporate world for a long time, talks about, we've got to get more gender diversity. But when it comes to putting your money where your mouth is, then there is always that gap. So I think the first and most important thing that corporates need to get to terms with themselves is there a conviction that gender diversity is important? I certainly have that conviction, and took significant action to correct that. But I think the important question to answer is how much do we care about it, and how innovative are we willing to be in terms of ensuring that the environment for women in corporates is positive, is conducive. And I think I want to put one other thing in perspective. We hear a lot about, women come and then they leave because they have babies and blah, blah, blah. The question is that in a 35 or 40-year career, even if somebody goes away for a period of, 2 to 6 months each to go and have a baby, what is 1 year in a 40-year career? So I do believe that I think we have to change perspectives on this. We have to really have authentic conversations about what do we really care about, because what we care about, we will find answers to. What we pay lip service to, we may not spend the time and the effort that is required to address those issues. But certainly these issues have to be addressed. And I think when it comes to women, we care about it because, you know, they are 50% of our population. And why should we even be debating, you know, how should we empower them? Why should we empower them? How do you correct the inequity? The fact we're having these debates is good, but I do believe that that has to be followed up with specific, concrete action.
Right, absolutely, it has to be followed by specific concrete action, and which is why I'm going to raise one important issue here. And Shobhana Kamanani, if you look at any other developed countries, the proportion of women directors, for instance, is anywhere between 25 to 40%. In India, we're still hovering around the 10 to 15% mark. I'm really talking about women at the top, you know, women on boards, women directors and all of that. How can corporate India help to bring them to top positions? I know the New Companies Act talks about women directors, the board needs to be more diversified, but this has to be a more concerted, a more concrete effort being put in.
So the ministry, you know, their heart is in the right place. Like Vinita said, if you care enough about an issue, you'll find the solutions to it. Right now, what's happened is that we have the intent in place, and in fact, it's a regulation that you have to have a woman independent director. Even on our board that has 4 women, we still have a woman independent director. So I think that the regulation is very clear. Now, but how do we get people who, you know, at the end of the day, companies are not going to put a female face that is that doesn't measure up to the other men. I think that would not be serving the purpose of this correctly. So now it's really the ability for us to create that space, and it's a great opportunity. And I think because of that, more women, you know, now of course the natural choices are the Arundhati, who was pursued a lot when she left, but you know, from the banking sector or from the IAS, the women that retire, but they need to come from, you know, many spheres. Vinita sits on many boards, but we don't have enough competent, independent women, and I think that is an opportunity in India right now, because the intent is clearly there.
No, fair point indeed. There is an intent, and I think we need to walk in that direction. But before I move any further, I do want to ask Ms. Bhattacharya a very obvious question that doesn't get, you know, talked about very often. And while you shattered a big glass ceiling, you know, you went on to become the first female to head India's largest lending institution, the SBI. What is it about the banking sector? What is it about financial services that ensures such a high female participation? And I'm not just talking about public sector banks. I mean, the RBI has seen female deputy governors. We've seen private sector banks, you know, where a lot of women have gone on to lead those banks. What is this particular lesson that other industries can draw from banking and financial services that have seen more women participation and also women leaders like yourselves?
Well, one thing I think, you know, in the financial services, basically promotions, I think, are very much merit based, and it doesn't depend upon the connections and things you have. People will promote you if they can see that you are delivering. I think one other reason is there, because of which we started having a larger amount of female participation in the financial services area. And this is because in 1969, after the nationalization of the banks expanded at a furious pace. And because of that, they had to do a lot of recruitments. These recruitments in the public sector, as you know, they were open examinations. So it was basically on the basis of merit, same as the IAS examinations. And as a result of that, you saw a lot of women coming in, because women would in all circumstances, you know, very rarely have the kind of connects that you need in order to sort of push yourself forward and get a job. But getting it through these open examinations was far easier. And because banking was considered to be something that you did within the confines of the four walls, probably it was also a area of employment that parents and families were comfortable with. You know, before banking, the two main areas where women were employed was mainly in the area of teaching and in the area of medicine, because again doctors worked within hospitals, within the four walls. I think, you know, taking off from there, finance then became more common, because, you know, there were all of these women that were becoming bankers, and as an extension of that, finance again became something that became more common for women to get in. Of course, it has taken women about 30-35 years to work themselves up into the C-suites, or to have sufficient numbers whereby even if some portion dropped off, there would be sufficient numbers to keep going up the ladder. So I think that's the way in which women have sort of come into these financial services, because though actually it is not at all a desk-bound job, but the original impression that people had was that women would be in a desk-bound job if they entered the area of finance. I can't say how wrong they were, because when I was even a junior officer, the kind of hours I was keeping and the kind of places I was going to, including in deep rural areas, it was anything but desk bound. But I don't think that my parents quite realized what they were letting me in for when they agreed that, you know, I should try and become a banker.
No, fair point indeed. Just hold that thought, because I want to touch upon another very important issue. And Vinita Bali, if I may come to you for this, you know, the impact of internet on the female workforce. And we'll discuss on why women leave in just a bit and how that needs to stop. But if you actually see what was happening in workplaces in India, it was a very binary choice. You either get to keep your job or you head for the door and you quit. Has internet increased the participation of women in our workforce? Internet perhaps has given a lot of women the freedom to work at their pace. You know, people are making money off social media thanks to internet and all of that, especially in the entertainment industry. Has that in some sense redefined female participation in work? And, you know, is it advantage women because they can finally choose what they want to do at what time it suits them, and perhaps also monetize that effort? Has internet perhaps, do you believe the gig economy has changed that equation?
You know, Supriya, certainly technology has enabled work in new and innovative ways. So I don't have to be at a desk to do my work. But I think technology has enabled both the way in which women work and in which men work. I want to come back to something that Arundhati said, which I think is very, very important. I think the example that she gave of why, to your question of why we have so many women in banking, is a very important one, because to me, what it illustrated is that when you create enough opportunities for women, and it is a level playing field, and the basis of selection and continuation is merit and competency, women actually do as well or extremely well. So the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, what is coming in the way of creating those equal opportunities for both men and women? Because I actually cannot think of any reason why it should be different, certainly in the corporate world. You know, there is a huge world outside of the corporate world, and, you know, if you like, we can talk about how the odds are stacked against women when you look at agriculture and other things like that. But if you were to still stick to the corporate world, I do believe that when there is equality of opportunity, when we are talking about equity as being the value on which decisions are based. When we are not talking about sacrificing competence for filling up a quota, I need an independent woman director, so let me go and find an independent woman director. There are enough qualified women. We have 7,000 listed companies. Is somebody going to tell me that we can't find 7,000 really qualified and competent women in India? I don't believe it. Of course they exist. But if we want to say that the only women who join the boards are going to be CEOs, then obviously it gets reduced.
Fair point. Fair point. Shobhana Kamlani, there's an interesting question and an interesting debate that got sparked with an Indra Nooyi remark when she said, women can't have it all. Is that the sad reality, or do you believe a woman can realistically have it all? Is it too utopian to think one can? And we're all women on this show, let's be candid with each other.
Supriya, I think I have it all. I have 3 kids, loving husband, huge family, huge family, and I've started 3 businesses. I run 4 others. So even work-wise, by any terms, I guess I would be qualified as a success. But then that measure is there for everybody, and so I think that men can't have it all. But in this day and age, I like that question about technology, because what it's done is that I think that technology is a great leveler. So probably technology has made it a more level playing field, that women can work from home, that women can take off, that they have the ability to track their kids, to video conference with them, and to continuously be in touch with them. So think about that. I think that we're creating more tools nowadays for us to be able to have it all. And I think that having it all, we continue to develop. What I wanted, if you had asked me this question when I was in my 30s, I'd say, hey, I really don't have anything. So this is something that also comes with maturity. As that question happens, you have it all, and I think the women around me. So the candid question is, it depends on how you look at it, the glass half full or half empty.
Right. It's interesting you say that, because I think a lot of us will say, that's utopia and it's difficult. But you're right. I think if we count our blessings and if we count what we can do with our time management, perhaps we can have it all. But anyways, let me just, but I also say, I think we work twice as hard as men do at our jobs, because we've got to balance so much more. And I say that, on national TV. But Ms. Bhattacharya, there is one question that, we grapple with on an everyday basis, and as leaders, we kind of face this on an ongoing basis. Do women end up paying a price for being child bearers? Does the biggest event of her life also becomes the biggest hurdle for her professional career? Very often when you see data, it tells you that when women take a break from work, it's because of the fact that they've had a child. So there are 2 questions there. How do you ensure that that inherent bias doesn't kick in against a woman because she's going to bear a child? Because the same woman is going to be called very aggressive, but the same man doing the same thing will be called ambitious. And the second thing is that how do you retain women? Because very often when a woman has taken that break, heading to the door seems to be the only option. And also, how do you make them, how do you incentivize women to come back? They seem to have missed the bus. They can't find those jobs back. What do corporates need to do?
Well, one thing is, regarding the break for having a child, I think this is becoming now more and more sort of accepted. And because, your annual reports get written on an annual basis, therefore, even if you take a break for 6 months, it doesn't really impact what you are going to get at the end of the year. And most of the times, there are enough people who are quite sympathetic about this. They understand this. They empathize rather than sympathize. And as long as they are empathizing, they will not They will not dock you for having been away for something which is absolutely essential to any life. So therefore, I think, the break for childbearing is now something that is much more accepted, and there are very many companies that try and make this break as seamless as possible, as simple as possible, and ensure that sufficient amount of support is given. However, a woman, from what my experience has been, is that a woman needs a break not only at the time of childbearing. We have found in our organization that a lot of women also need breaks later on in life, especially when the child is somewhere, just before college, that is between the classes of 9 to 12, as well as later on when the parents or parents-in-law, they fall sick and geriatric care is required at home. These are the times when it really becomes very taxing for women, because there is very little understanding or sympathy for these kinds of activities. And yet, for a woman, if she doesn't really look after the home in these periods of time, it causes within her a lot of feelings of guilt and anxiety. And that's why, we try to give a further sabbatical for child care and for elderly care, to make sure that women who are in this situation, they can take a break and then they can come back. Now, if the break extends over a period of 1 year or 2 years, it is a fact that even now when they come back, they do suffer in the sense that the seniority goes down. But again, it's a matter of 1 or 2 years. People, as they go up in their careers, they lose 1 or 2 years while getting promotions as well. So to that extent, in the ultimate reckoning, it doesn't really make that big a difference. But yes, temporarily when you come back, you will feel that you're with a junior batch and your batch has gone ahead. But I have seen a lot of women catching up and then doing better as well. So I don't think this should be something that should become a big barrier to them coming back. Having said that, it is a fact that once women take a break, sometimes they find that it's difficult to get back again. And then, for such people, I would say that the corporates need to make some special effort. They need to make an effort to see that whether they can retrain and reskill these people. They need to make an effort to see that they get some mentoring to ensure that these people can get back in and know how their career can develop again. So some amount of special care probably is required. However, I have also known people who have taken a break and then gone on to do their own thing, to set up a small entrepreneurial activity or whatever.
Absolutely.
And they have flourished there as well. So I think, the opportunities are limitless. It's only limited by what you believe you can achieve.
I think you're absolutely right on that, and we've been speaking to a shining example of one of them who broke the glass ceiling and realized her true potential. I have time for 2 last questions, and Ms. Bali, I think it's only fair that we talk about the elephant in the room, and in a year where horrific tales of Me Too are tumbling out of every industry, shouldn't there be dedicated dialogue on this topic? Because very often workplace culture and the inherent bias against women sometimes is also the biggest deterrent for women to continue to work.
Supriya, I think you're absolutely right. And this is not just in the context of Me Too. I think the entire dialogue around gender diversity needs to move away from gender and towards competency, towards equity, towards the availability of opportunities, towards how we're going to create workplaces that operate on the basis of values and respect for all and are not skewed in any particular way. So I think this dialogue has to be a big shift, and it calls for a different kind of mindset. We're talking about women as though there are women, and then when women go to have children, there is a man involved in that decision as well. He may not be employed in the same company, but if men want to have children, then they have to accept the fact that that is going to cause some sort of a very temporary disruption. And as I said earlier, I think we've debated this thing enough. I think this debate has to move towards competency, towards equity, towards value-based decisions. And, finally, I do think we need some fathers who are like the Dangal father. And I think the change has to begin somewhere. And I think it's the ecosystem, not just in the workplace, but also in our homes, in the society, and in communities. We need more Renaissance men, we need more Dangal fathers, we need more support for women, whether it is from their spouse, from their dad, from their brother, from their male colleagues, and only then will it shift. If we keep talking about women going away on maternity leave, we're just getting stuck in something which in my mind is really not that critical.
Oh yes, absolutely. And it is not as if she goes on a maternity leave all on her own. There was a man involved in that process as well, and she's perhaps creating the future generations. But, a quick last question, and Shobhana Kamalani, somewhere when we talk about gender empowerment and women empowerment, we do get, we do restrict ourselves to talk about corporate India, we restrict ourselves to talk about urban women. But some of the most positive stories on gender empowerment and gender equity actually come from rural and suburban India. The kind of organizations like Seva or Kudumbashri, they've lifted so many women out of poverty. And, their story is one of struggle and grit. What are the lessons, or do you believe there are lessons to be learned for urban women empowerment from women who really fight it all?
I work with, and I've seen the women in the villages that we do with CSR, and it's the women that come up first, and I like that because that's where you really see the collaborative of women, that it's easier for them to bond together, to come together, to be able to either loan money or to create a small enterprise like they're doing with us in several of the villages that we support. So I think that's a lesson that the urban women, if we can find more connections for them, and I think that it would have been difficult for a Seva to happen in a busy city that, is while we might be in close proximity, we actually are very distant in terms of our social association with our neighbors. And I think when you can put that together and break those barriers, you're going to find women coming together a lot more. So I would think that more Uber having a huge section of women drivers, that will create different enterprise. There will be different dynamics happening. And I think that we'll see it in that context, like whether it's Lijjat or a Seva or any of these NGOs that you have that are in villages, you'll find a different kind of thing coming from the women that are in the cities. And who knows, I think that Shiro's is a great example. You talked about the gig economy. Those are things because these are women who are probably more educated and they have connectivity. So that's what you will find, and their social interactions will be of a different level. So I think overall, it's one word is collaborative, and I think that's where women will score and come together more and more. And if we can make those connections and associations, that's going to help, and probably any of those women watching this show will understand what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. But on that note, I'm completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate, and I can't thank each one of you for joining us, not just because you are powerful speakers and not just because you are relevant to the subject, but because each one of you in your fields of work has broken that glass ceiling, has shattered those glass ceilings, has shattered the stereotypes, and in some sense you inspire women around you to be able to achieve that. And I think that inspiration is extremely important on a day like today, and that is the value and a message that today carries. Thank you very much, Arundhati Bhattacharya, Vinita Bali, and of course Shobhana Kamalani for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a breather. There's lots more coming up right here on ET.